Claude Monet was a French painter. He lived in the countryside and owned a house with a magical garden and lily pond. He was often found painting outside in his garden. He is most well known for his watercolor landscapes. Alright, so today we are going to make our own bridge inspired by Claude Monet. And you're going to start to take out all of your materials from your kit, and you'll notice that you have two different size tapes. The first tape we're going to use is this thick tape. So we have a thick tape and we have a thin tape. So take your thick tape out, and yours will be on a little piece of cardboard. So you can just start to peel it off. What we're going to do is we are going to make a horizontal line. A horizontal line goes side to side. A vertical line goes up and down. So we're going to take our horizontal line and we are going to put it probably, this is like a quarter of our page. So we don't want it in the middle. That would be half. We want it a little bit lower on the bottom. You see that? So just a little bit towards the bottom, but you still want to have some room on the bottom because we're going to make our lily pads in our pond. So it's okay if your tape goes over a little bit. We'll actually use that to our advantage. It'll help hold our paper in place. Alright, so that is all we need our large tape for today. Next we're going to take out our thin tape. And what we're going to do is peel a little bit of this off. You can use your scissors to help cut the tape, or this tape is pretty easy to kind of just tear, but if you need some help, you can ask an adult to use your scissors to cut. So I just tore mine off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to almost make a triangle top for my bridge. Get that other piece. And I'm going to take this off and I'm just going to tear. Very easy to do. And then, so it almost looks like I have a really long triangle. And now what I need to do is I need to make the bars on my bridge. So these lines are going to be up and down. These are going to be vertical lines. So we've made one horizontal line. Now we're going to make vertical lines all along our bridge. And you can choose however many you want. We do want them to be spaced apart because something magical is going to happen when we start adding some paint to this. So I have my first bar here, and I'm going to space this out. I'm going to do just 5 bars on mine. You could do 4 if you just want 4. Or maybe you want 6. Find the tape. There we go. I'm going to put one right in the middle of my bridge. So see how there's some nice space in between them? We are going to want to see the sky and the trees behind our bridge. So make sure that your vertical lines aren't too close together. Make sure there's enough space in between them. Alright, I'm going to do 2 more. And then 1 more. Alright. There we go. So my bridge is all done and my paper is taped to the table. So I'm going to put my tape away because I don't need it anymore. What I'm going to have you do is you have a water cup in your kit. Take your water cup out and fill it up with some water. I'm going to go fill up my water. I'll be right back. Alright, I am back with my water cup. I have a paintbrush. I have my watercolor palette. So you can take all of those things out, open up your palette, and the first thing we need to do is we need to get each watercolor wet. So when we do this, we don't want to be rubbing our brush, our bristles in the water. We just want to be lightly dabbing it. We don't want to be getting any colors on our brush just yet. We need to get our watercolors wet, get them ready to be used. And even if you don't plan on using all of the colors, I want you to get all of them wet, because you might change your mind once we start working with these. Give them a little bit of extra water. All right, so all of my colors are wet and they are ready to be used. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work on making my pond. I'm gonna be making the water underneath my bridge. So I'm gonna start with some blue. And when I put my brush, I wanna do long, big strokes. Grab a little bit more. And make sure that you're also putting your paintbrush in the water in between your strokes, making sure that we're still getting that paint wet, because if it's not wet enough, it will not show. But watercolors are kind of tricky, because sometimes you can use too much water and other times you can use too little water. So it's all about finding that balance, finding how much is too much and how much is too little. So I have done all of my blue for my water. But when we look at water, it's not always blue. Sometimes there's some greens in it, some purples. So I'm gonna wash my brush really good. When I wash my brush, you hear it scraping against the side. So make sure you scrape it against the side really good, and then you're gonna take your fingers and we're gonna pinch them. This is your thumb and your pointer finger. We're gonna put those together and we're gonna make sure all of that water, all of that extra paint is out of our brush, because we don't wanna mix our colors. We want to dip our paintbrush into the green and it just be green. All right, so now I have my first layer of color on. I have some blue. I'm gonna add some green in here. And I'm just gonna kind of do some large strokes. And then I'm gonna clean my brush really good again. And this time, I wanna add a little bit of purple in there. You can see my water, it's starting to create a variety of different colors. Some look a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, almost like when we look at the waves if we're at the beach when they're coming in. Sometimes they look a little bit lighter and a little bit darker. So my water is all done. I'm gonna leave it this way. I like the way it looks. You can keep working on it till you like the way it looks, and then you can pause the video, start painting. When you're all done and you feel like your water is the way you want it to look, we're gonna move to the trees and behind the bridge. This is gonna be the background. The bridge is the main thing that we wanna see in this painting, and behind it is gonna be the background. So if you wanna keep working on your water, pause the video. If not, let's keep going. So my paintbrush is all washed. I am going to use some green. And when I make my trees in the background, I'm going to almost like stamp it. See how it's making some cool lines with the bristles? And I'm going to do this for the whole background. All of my background is going to be trees. All right, so now you'll see all of my background is green. I have all of that nice leaf pattern going on from the different brush strokes that I used. I'm going to clean my brush really good. Now, the one thing I want you to make sure before you move to the next step is please make sure we can't see really any white. We want it to be as green as possible, as filled in. I know it's a lot of work. It's going to look so great when you're done. I'm actually going to add a little bit of yellow in there because I know sometimes that when leaves are really light, sometimes they're a little bit yellow. And this is gonna make some of my leaves seem like they're a little bit further away and a little bit closer. It's gonna give them some depth, make them look a little bit more lifelike. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of the yellow. You could even add maybe a little bit of the brown or the orange if you wanna do maybe a fall scene over your pond. So just making sure that everything is really painted right now. Still doing my stamping, my up and down strokes. And when I'm all done with my leaves, I am going to move on. I'm going to go back to my pond. And this time, when I go back to my pond, I'm going to create some lilies and some lily pads, just like we saw in Mr. Monet's paintings. All right, so now I'm all ready. My background is done, my pond is done. I'm gonna clean my brush really good. And while I'm cleaning it, you'll start to see that your bristles kind of start to fan out from the way we were using our brush. You can kind of just use your fingers to kind of try and pull them together a little bit. We are going to start with the green. And when we're making our lily pads, they're almost kind of like circles. And then they have like a triangle that's cut out of them. Almost like if somebody ate the slice of a pizza. Out of a whole pizza. My lily pads are a little bit big. It's okay if yours are smaller or even bigger. That's okay. All right, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lily pads. I wonder how many lily pads you guys have. I'm gonna clean my brush off again, and this time I'm going to use red, and I'm going to use red to make some lilies. Lilies are a type of flower, and they usually grow in the ponds. So I'm going to almost make lines, curved lines with my paintbrush. And I'm building up the inside from the outside. So starting one side, doing the opposite side. And I have some nice big lilies in my pond. I'm gonna add one more. All right, and now is the really fun part. So we are gonna let it dry, and when we come back, we get to take all this tape off and we're gonna see what's underneath our little magic trick. So give it maybe about 10 to 15 minutes to dry, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna peel it off together. Okay, so we are gonna start to take the tape off and see what's under our tape. I'm wondering, does anybody have any guesses what's gonna be under there? So we are going to see. What I want you to do is I want you to look for the tape that's on top. If we pull the tape that's on the bottom, it might rip the paper. So you want to find the tape that's on the top. So we did our bars last, so those are what we should take off first. When you're pulling it off, you want to kind of hold down where you're pulling from. Just give it the paper a little bit extra support so it doesn't rip. So I'm going to rip all of my bars off, and you can see there's white underneath it, so that means that the paint didn't get anywhere under our tape. Okay, so all my bars are revealed. They all look nice and white. You can see them. I'm going to do the top one here, and you can see that it's overlaid on top. So I'm going to do this one. Push down, kind of give it some support. All right, there's the top. Do the other side. I'm starting to see my bridge forming. Now I'm going to take the thick tape off. And when I do this, I really want to make sure that I'm holding down so I don't want to pull it too fast or rip anywhere that I've painted. If you start to see that it is ripping on one side, you can try from the other side. Sometimes if the paper is still a little too wet, it does rip a little bit easier. So, if you have a little piece like this, like I have, what you can do is you can always add a little bit of glue there. So it's not a huge deal. Grab out a glue stick. So I have my glue stick. It looks purple. When it dries though, it's going to be clear. So I'm going to put a little bit of that on those parts that ripped up. Glue them down. There's rarely anything in art that is not fixable. We can always fix or recreate things. So if yours ripped, that's okay. So you can see the purple a little bit still. When that dries, it's going to start to turn clear and we won't see it at all. So this is my bridge. I'd love to see all of your bridges. So what you can do when you're all done creating yours is you can have a parent, or if a parent lets you, take a picture of your artwork. You could hang it up. If you take a picture, please feel free to email them to me. You can have your parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles send me a picture of your artwork, or you can also post them on social media. You could post them to our Facebook or Instagram. You could tag us in them. I'd love to see your Monet garden. Thank you for joining me.